So a little bit about me. One sec, let me just adjust the mic. So I'm the CEO and founder of Tickled Media. Tickled Media is actually a publishing house, and we publish different types of online platforms which engage with women. Our most popular brand, or our flagship brand, is The Asian Parent. So just wanted to find out here first, do we have any parents amongst the crowd? Okay, I've got, oh, we do. That's nice. So mostly dads. Do we have any moms? Okay. Have any of the dads heard of The Asian Parent? Okay, so we've got one there, but so the name Asian Parent is pretty self-explanatory. It's a platform for parents living in Asia or of Asian descent. Before The Asian Parent, or before Tickled Media, I was actually running LiveJournal for Asia. I'm not sure how many here are old enough to remember LiveJournal. It was the world's first blogging platform, and in Singapore, it became really popular because a lot of the blog shops were on it. So we had popular blog shops like SG Flea, SG Spree. And then I'm also co-founded the Female Founders Network. So everything to do with entrepreneurship and women is a total pet peeve topic for me. So I'm not even going to delve into it because I could go on all day. And I also mentor startups at GFDI, Crib, angel invest with a couple of startups as well. And that's me in general. So my whole journey started in 2008, 2009 when I was babysitting in New York. So I was living in New York, and over the weekends I would babysit. And that's Kelsey over there. And Kelsey used to force me to take her for tea every weekend. So when I used to take her for tea, we would talk about things. She was 2.5 to 3 years old at that time. And the one thing that hit me was just how different Caucasians raise their children from Asians. So I'm a Singaporean. I grew up in Singapore. I'm of Indian descent, so I'm influenced by both, the whole Singapore rojak feel. So I have, I follow certain Malay practices, Indian practices, Chinese practices, but there are certain things that, all of us Asian, we kind of practice. So for example, she would occasionally, I would hear Caucasian kids calling their uncles and aunts by their first name. And every time I would hear someone calling someone Jill or Doreen or Bill, it would make me really shocked because that's not what we do here in Asia. Everyone is auntie and uncle, including the taxi driver. And but the most poignant moment was when Kelsey asked me, she said, Roshni, where do you come from? So I'm like, Singapore. She says, what's your national food? And I said, durian. She said, okay. She's like, what do you eat at home? And I said, wonton noodles. And then she's like, okay, what else do you eat? And I was like, paneer. And she was like, oh, can you make all these food for me? Can I eat them? And I was like, can a 3-year-old eat durian? Can a 3-year-old eat paneer? I wasn't sure. So I went online and I started checking it out. And there were a lot of different websites. Baby Center was the biggest at that point in time in 2009. But there was nothing that was specifically for the Asian parent. And it hit me, if we take China and India and we combine it together, we're half of the world's population. Why is there not enough content or resources for our audience? And if I had these questions, I'm sure every other Indian or Chinese person probably went through this. And our practices in parenting are just so different. I mean, here in Asia, we do things like confinement, where after 30 days after giving birth, a woman stays at home. We have certain practices, like it's quite common to actually encapsulate your placenta after giving birth. And so people here, we do eat it. Whereas, of course, this is not something that's done in the Western world. So my babysitting experience and journey gave me a lot of food for thought. And I started off Tickled Media first. It started off just with the Asian parent. And I created a blog, and I started writing about my experiences and doing a lot of research. So my background is journalism. So I just write about some theories, and I would speak to a lot of experts to find out what were myths and what were not myths. And then I realized, oh my gosh, maybe I do have a viable business here, because I started having a lot of readers. So in order to make sure that this was really a viable business, I sent out a survey or a market research project to all of my friends living across Asia. So I sent it out to some moms in Indonesia, some moms in Malaysia, some moms back in Singapore, and this is while I was living in New York. And I asked them, do you actually feel that there is a platform or a portal for you to get your information and your needs according to your customs and culture? And most of them replied back saying no. And so I said, okay, where do you get your Asian recipes or traditional Chinese medicine therapies and stuff like that. And they would say, oh, we'd call up our grandma, we'll call up our auntie and our uncle, but there's no place that it's actually documented. So I said, okay, maybe I'm really onto something. Then I decided to make sure that I could actually make money from this because, great, I could build a product that people would want, but is it actually viable as a business or is this a hobby website for me? So I called up a FMCG company, a milk brand in Singapore, and I decided to pitch to them. And I said, okay, I have this website. And by the way, the website was actually, the first iteration of Asian Parent was actually a template that I bought from Template Monster for $150. And so I put that up, got all of my friends to join the Facebook fan page for this website, and then I called up the FMCG brand. And I said, okay, I have this parenting website, it's very similar. So I told them my concept, my vision, my mission. And they said, okay, it sounds interesting. Let's have a meeting with you next week. I didn't tell them I was living in New York at that point in time. So I said, okay. So I was sitting at home and I was like going, should I spend $2,000 and fly back home to Singapore and meet with this company or should I not? So I said, okay, if I'm actually going to take this seriously, I should. So I bit the bullet and, it was another excuse to go home and eat my wonton mee. And so I took the first flight back home, created a media kit, did not know how to create a media kit. So I called up one of the competitors in the US and I asked them to send me their media kit. And then I aped it and I Asianized the whole thing. And I went for the meeting and they were impressed. And in 2 weeks' time, they sent me an invoice order and they said, we're willing to spend $6,000 for a 1-month campaign to engage with your mothers. I didn't tell them I didn't even have the business registered. So I decided to then register the business in order to be able to process the check. And that was how Asian Parent was started. So in 2010, I hired my first employee. In 2011, I launched Malaysia. 2012, I launched another niche website that just looked at pregnancy because I realized, especially in Singapore, parenting and pregnancy are two separate things altogether. A pregnant woman does not want to read about parenting. She doesn't want to be freaked out. She only cares about that 9-month process and what's going to happen during labor and delivery. And she's super engaged. And at the same time, parents are ready to tell you all the gory, scary stories of labor, and she doesn't want to be exposed to that yet. So Pregnant.SG was the second site we started. In 2013, by then we were already making maybe about $500,000 in revenue, and we had about 7 to 8 people. And I decided that this is a viable business. I have about a couple of 100,000 users on a regular basis. Let me actually go and do fundraise. So I did my first round of fundraising. It was my pre-Series A. We raised about $1 million from Lion Rock Capital. And then we expanded to a staff strength of 15. I then entered into the Thailand market, expanded, launched into Philippines. By 2014, I was a staff strength of 30. And then earlier this year, we raised venture capital from Vertex Ventures. And so now we've raised about $4.5 million in total. We have a staff strength of, at any given point, between 80 to 100 people. And the one thing that now we started to focus on is actually develop the product properly. So all this while we were running as a WordPress website. First we were at custom WordPress website. Then we became our own custom code, but product was never something that we really focused on until the beginning of this year. And then we hired a lot of engineers, Android, iOS developers, still looking for a lot of engineers though, and a data science team. And then we launched into India this year as well. So that's a summary of my Tickled Media journey. But based on my experiences, so right now we hit about 6 million users in 5 different markets. We make millions of dollars in revenue, and we're the #1 parenting website in Singapore, Thailand, Philippines, #2 in Indonesia, and top 5 in India. So besides that, I wanted to just find out, what do you guys think what do these 2 apps have in common? Do you guys know what these 2 apps are? Fantastic, yes. So Color and Wave. What do they have in common? Bingo, they failed. So why did they fail? So let's look at Color first. So before I go on, I just want to find out how many of you guys actually work to create your own in-house product or run your own startup? versus creating apps for other people. So sort of like vendors. So do we have more people who are creating their own in-house apps for their own company or, yeah? Show of hands? Okay, great. So you all are building your own products, mostly. So Color raised 41 million US from VC funding. They had Sequoia, they had Bain. They had a lot of hype before launch. In fact, they closed their fundraising round before they even launched out their product. But the problem with Color was that in its first 6 months, it first started off as this photo sharing party app. You would go to sort of like a social network where you would share photos. See, I can't even explain it till now. And after 6 months, they realized that wasn't working. So they actually pivoted their business and they created a video app social sharing thing, which also didn't work. So the concept was just too foreign. It was marketed very, very well, but the moment people started using it, they realized there was no need for this product. The product was very advanced, but for the average user, it was too advanced. It had too many bells, it had too many whistles. The same thing for Wave. Wave was actually touted as the ultimate email killer. I think 30% of users waste 3 or more hours a week on emails. It's like a total waste of time. And so Wave wanted to actually be the platform which would combine email, chat, and productivity. But because they had too many things going on, when the average user downloaded Wave, they didn't know how to use it. So that's one of the problems that I noticed with a lot of developers. And now that I work with a lot of developers, they like to build out features before testing and finding out if users really want it. So most things that developers end up building is just too complicated. You guys are advanced people. The average user is nowhere as close as advanced as you guys. So you may realize that this is a feature you want right now, but the average user might just want that feature in 5 years' time. So to begin with, what I realized, the 3 things that they actually did wrong was they didn't spend enough time on customer development. They built great products, but no one wanted these products. And then there was a lack of unique selling point for each of these products because they tried to sell too many different things that the products were doing. So for example, Color as well, its marketing message was just not clear. Right from the beginning was photo, then it moved on to videos. So by the end of it, a user doesn't know what this app actually stands for. And then again, it doesn't resonate with your target users. So this is the reality in the App Store right now. We have 1.5 billion apps in the App Store. 2% of app developers bring in 50% of all revenue. That means there are a handful of companies that are building apps that people want. Most apps do not make any money. Most apps don't have many users. The average developer makes $100 a month for his app. So you put in all of this effort building out a product that you think is amazing, but nobody downloads it, nobody uses it. And this happens time and time and time again. The 9 out of 10 startups will fail. And the number one reason they'll fail, according to Business Insider, and I'm so sorry that I'm quoting something like Business Insider here, but they make products that nobody wants. So how do you build apps that people love? So I spoke to 3 founders, and these are some of the more popular apps here in Singapore. Carousel, 99, Bakipa. So Carousel is actually a pre-loved marketplace, and it targets the younger audience, so mostly teenagers, youth, who buy and sell clothes, furniture, and all kinds of stuff. So Marcus had a very good advice for everyone here. He said, start with a small problem. Don't give up in the process of trying to solve that problem. Our core value proposition didn't change, but the way we tackled that problem over time did. Darius said a very similar thing as well. So he looked at finding a problem as well. So what was interesting though was that Marcus looked at finding a small problem, but Darius decided to find the hardest problem. So pick a hard problem you care about, and if you keep trying to attack it, you might build something that would be really worthwhile. Bakipa. Bakipa is sort of like a carousel for mothers. So they only specifically target the mom audience or the dad audience, and they buy and sell pre-loved baby stuff. So for Marigold, she said, talk to your customers. We built a very basic minimum viable product and then iterated based on the data we collected and the conversations we had with users. Great advice. So I think what I'm trying to say here is that don't go around building out different kinds of features. The most important thing that you really need to do is market research. You need to find out, most developers hate it when I say this, but you need to create a business plan. A business plan which tells you, why are you building this? Is there actually a market size for this? Is this just a unique problem that you and your friends are facing? So, and I've experienced a lot of this because Tickled Media, we've actually created 4 or 5 different mom brands. But some of the brands did not do as well as Asian Parent because the market was not big enough. So for example, we had a brand called Kidlander. Kidlander was just targeting the expat parents. Over time, we realized that wasn't a viable business because in Singapore, we only have 30,000 babies born every year. If we take it that, expats represent 10% of this population, you're talking about 3,000 kids a year that you're actually catering to. That's way too small. So as an expat mom, you might actually feel it's a huge market because that's your whole circle around you. But if you actually really look at the numbers, it's a very small market. So it doesn't become a business, it just becomes a nice hobby website. So creating a business plan is really, really important. Find out what's your unique selling point. What is it that you actually want to go out to market with? For Asian Parent, it was very clear. Parenting advice for Asian parents. Everyone who went to the website, anyone who even looked at any of the apps or anything, it was very clear to them what they were going to get from this. And another thing that I think a lot of developers need to think about is how are you going to monetize it? Because in the beginning, yes, nobody builds products because you want to make money from it. But over time, in order for the product to be successful, you need to be able to monetize it. So don't ignore monetization. You also need to do market research. You need to send out surveys, you need to speak to people, and you need to get out of your comfort zone. So if you're even developing a product here in Singapore, don't just do your market research with Singaporeans. Do your market research with everyone around the region because the way each person behaves in each market is going to be so different. And you might realize that, okay, this product works for Thailand, for example, and not necessarily for the market that you initially wanted to launch in. And you also need to figure out if your market is niche enough because if you try to go for something that's too big, you're going to draw it out. You also need to, so one of the things that we did as well, and I think that really worked well for us was that we went really minimum viable product, right? It was a template, monster template. And for us, that was to test it, to figure out if people actually wanted such a service. If they didn't want such a service, then we knew that we would kill it and we would not end up building it. You also need to market it. A lot of times I think people feel, okay, and this is something I noticed even in my own development team. Alvin sitting here heads up our engineering department, and he's working on some super sleuth product, which I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes. And one thing Alvin always does is he creates these beautiful features and designs and mock-ups, and then I tell him, how are we going to get users for it? And he's like, I don't know. How are we going to get users for it? That's your problem. So developers like to do that, right? Like they don't like to think about marketing, but the whole idea is that marketing comes hand in hand. So there's no use if you create this amazing product, but nobody knows about it. So figure out, are you going to go for SEO? If you're going to do SEO, then you need to SEO your app description as well. Are you going to get influencers? Who are going to be the initial users? You can't just rely on the tech community unless you're building out a tech product for the tech community. So while everyone here clamors to get featured on TechCrunch or Tech in Asia or E27, if you're trying to get the general mass market user, should you really be clamoring for that TechCrunch article or should you be clamoring for the BBC coverage? So you really need to put things into perspective. You also need to track your progress. A lot of times I notice with my in-house team is that they'll build out the product and then they'll say, oh, A/B testing happens later on. But no, A/B testing should happen right from the beginning. Every small little thing, you need to decide why you have small little things in your website or in your app. So I'll give you an example. We've got the new design for Asian Parent ready for the last 4 months. We've tested it out with a number of users. We're dying to roll it out because the current site just looks awful. But when we go and speak to users about it and we show them the new designs and we speak to clients, they freak out because people don't like change. People have been seeing the same thing for the last 6 years. It's like going in and giving Craigslist a facelift. Most people are going to revolt around it. So we experience the same problem as well. But we end up making small little changes. So at any given point in time, we make 20% changes to our app or our website. And we also A/B test every change we make to make sure that it's really things that people want. And the last thing you should be worrying about or doing is fundraising. So I really like my startup journey because I got to do so much of market research and really understand my audience. I don't think there's anyone who understands the Asian parenting market better than me in the whole of Asia. And that's because I've had 6 years to study this market. It took me 3 years before I did my first fundraise. So I'm really glad that we bootstrapped it and we tried to figure out how to make money right from the beginning. It also meant I didn't take a salary for the first 2 years. And then I took a very small salary before starting to pay people well as well. So everyone in our company has very good employee stock option plans. And ultimately, if you're building a product that you know people want, you know the money's going to come in at some point. But don't worry about fundraising. Do not fundraise before you've actually launched out your product because you might end up having to go the color way. So what are we building now? So with all the years of experience working with this niche market, I've come to realize a few things about the Asian parenting market. The way the Asian moms behave is definitely different from anywhere else, but the way moms in general behave is just different. Moms, whether they're in the US or Europe or Singapore, motherhood is one of the most overwhelming things that could happen. In fact, parenthood is one of the most overwhelming things. I'm sure fathers here could attest to that. It's life-changing, So suddenly from being a woman, you become a mom, and you don't know how to behave, and you're confused, and there are 1,000,001 different feedback that you get and advice that you get from different people. You read different websites, you get different feedback. You speak to different people, you get different feedback. Even your own mom could be giving you things that are just completely outdated and against WHO's policies. And living here in Asia, we're at that crossroads, right? Because we're exposed to a lot of Western literature, and we're exposed to research, but then some of it conflicts with some of our Asian traditional beliefs. And we're also co-parenting here in Asia. So we live with our, whatever our in-laws tell us matters here in Asia. So it's no longer just you raising your child, but your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, your maid, everyone has a say in how you raise this child. It really takes, a village to raise a child here in Asia. So looking at the behavior of these moms, we realized that the one thing missing for them is really a social network just for moms. So that's what we're actually building out. It's launching out in Q4 of this year. We have our Android app ready, so pretty excited about it. But the reason I'm bringing that up right now is I feel like I've had so many years of doing market research that now I actually know how to build a product that people really want. And the fact is that we're starting off by still going small. We're starting niche. We're still looking at the same audience that we're already comfortable with, which is Asian moms. We're looking at it, we're launching it out in Singapore and India and Malaysia first. So it's the English-speaking markets. We also noticed with InMobi, when they were looking at some reports from InMobi, we realized that Asia actually has the highest app install rates. And it's the demographic that's installing apps in Asia is below the age of 30. And parents in Asia are also below the age of 30. So the first time a woman becomes a mom in Asia is about 25 to 26 years old. And the most beautiful thing about it is that we actually get to market to our existing database of 6 million users. So one of the key insights that we realized was, because I don't like building out products until I've sort of done the whole MVP thing. So we knew that we wanted this new social network would be a cross between Facebook and WhatsApp. So we decided why not just create a Facebook group and create WhatsApp groups. So now we have about 60 different Facebook groups. Our Facebook groups have about 30,000 users in each group. These groups are very, very intimate. So it would be things like Breastfeeding Moms Singapore, Breastfeeding Moms Thailand. And we started watching how they actually interact with each other. And we noticed that the ways moms chat on groups is very unique. The average mom, so for a website like Quora, Q&A website, you'd have 90% of people lurking and 10% of people responding to questions or answers. On Facebook groups to do with parenting, you would have 40% of people answering at any point in time. So they're very engaged because it's such a small niche community. So an example of the Singapore Breastfeeding Moms group, on a daily basis, we have at least 2,000 to 3,000 questions and answers going on every single day. And this is a country which only has 30,000 babies born every year. So we were like, okay, so Facebook's fantastic, right? But Facebook has some of its own limitations. So we said, okay, these moms actually want to chat with each other in real time. Facebook is more about questions and answers. So we decided to set up WhatsApp groups to see whether we would see the same type of behavior, crazy engagement. So we sent out a survey among our moms to find out who wanted to be part of which WhatsApp groups. So we created 100 different WhatsApp groups, Viber groups, and Line groups, dividing the moms up according to the month that their baby was born in and the country that they were in. So we had a Jan 2016 mom group from Singapore. We had a February 2016 mom group from Thailand. And we wanted to see how do they actually chat with each other. We would limit the group size to 50 to 100 people. And we started noticing that if I don't check my phone for an hour and a half, I have about 1,000 missed messages. And it happened in every single country that we tested it in. It happened across Line, WhatsApp, and Viber. So based on those two hypotheses, it was very clear to us that we had to create something that was specifically targeting these Asian moms, which allowed them to find each other, to talk to someone who is going through the same exact milestone as them. The main thing was discoverability, right? If I'm a breastfeeding mom right now, or if I'm a mom who's potty training my child, I don't know which of my friends are potty training at this exact moment. And I want to speak to her because I don't want to speak to someone who's been through the potty training process because I need to rant. I need to talk about how frustrating this process is. And I want to feel like I'm not alone. So what they need is a community. So based on these two hypotheses, we decided we'll come up with a mobile-first social network for Asian moms. So look out for it. It's launching Q4 this year. Thank you. Oh, and if anyone here is looking for to join a fast-growing startup, feel free to LinkedIn me or email me.